you. My name is Magdalena Barrera. I am Vice Provost for Faculty Success, and on behalf of Provost Vincent Del Casino, I'd like to welcome you to our University Scholar Series, in which we highlight the work of some of our outstanding faculty. Apologies for those who have been waiting for now 13 minutes to check out this webinar. We were having some technical difficulties, so we are taking it from the top. And we're here today to hear from Dr. Dina Izenstark. And let's move on to our land acknowledgement.
We'd like to begin this program by recognizing that while we gather at San Jose State University, we're gathered on the ethno-historic tribal territory of the Tamian Ohlone, who were the direct ancestors of the lineages enrolled in the Muwekma Ohlone tribe, and who were missionized into missions Santa Clara, San Jose, and Dolores. San Jose State University also desires to honor the military service of the Muwekma men and women who have honorably served overseas during World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, Iraq, and who are still serving in the United States Armed Forces today.
Okay, so very quickly, a little bit of housekeeping. This talk is being recorded and closed captions are available to you. We're going to be using the Q&A function. You'll see that at the bottom of your Zoom window. If you have a question throughout Dr. Izenstark's presentation, please note it there. And we want to encourage everyone to use the upvoting feature. If you see a question that you think is really great, help it rise to the top, and that'll help us have a very robust Q&A session. Next, we'd like to acknowledge our sponsors. This University Scholar Series is brought to you by the Office of the Provost, San Jose State University King Library, including the team that's helping to support this series today, the Department of Child and Adolescent Development, and the Division of Research and Innovation. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our colleague, Dr. Dina Izenstark. Dr. Izenstark is an Associate Professor of Child and Adolescent Development at San Jose State University. Her interdisciplinary research examines how time spent in nature influences the health and well-being of children and families. She holds a PhD in Human Development and Family Studies and master's and bachelor's degrees in Recreation Management from the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. Dr. Izenstark's scholarship is rooted in her hands-on experience designing and delivering community-based recreation programs. She aims to promote children's healthy development and strengthen family relationships through accessible, everyday outdoor leisure activities. The title of her lecture today is Families in Nature, Understanding the Benefits of Shared Outdoor Time. And I'm very pleased to turn things over to Dr. Izenstark. We're excited to hear what you have to share with us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vice Provost Barrera, and thank you so much to the University Scholars team for all of your help in organizing this event. All right, perfect. So as mentioned, my name is Dina Izenstark, and I'm excited to talk with you today about families in nature, understanding the benefits of shared outdoor time. And I'm grateful all of you are here. Thank you so much for taking the time to attend today's presentation. So I want to first talk a little bit about my educational background and professional experiences that have really shaped my interdisciplinary program of research. So I earned my bachelor's and master's degree in recreation management, and then I worked for a few years as a leisure services supervisor. And during that time, I found that as much as I enjoyed the field of recreation, I was more interested in understanding how participation in these activities influence children's development and family relationships more so than implementing the programs themselves. So that really inspired me to go back to school and earn my PhD in Human Development and Family Studies. And then after grad school and living in Illinois my entire life, I moved to California to start my position as an assistant professor in the Child and Adolescent Development Department and now an associate professor. And for the last 8 years, I am truly grateful for the opportunity to teach so many amazing students, work with such wonderful colleagues, and love that I get to study what I'm most passionate about, learning the impact of nature on children and families. And I'm excited to share more about that with you today. So from today's presentation, I want you to take away two key things. One, that nature makes us healthier. And two, I hope it inspires you to get outdoors and connect or reconnect with nature. So the first theme is nature makes us healthier. There's one number that may predict how healthy you are and even how long you live. Any guesses on what this number might be? So even though you can't see each other's message, we can see your message if you have a guess you want to put in the chat. Ooh, I see some coming in, yay. So we have cholesterol, how much time you exercise, blood pressure. These are all wonderful guesses. It's not your weight. It's not your cholesterol. It's not your blood pressure. It's not any of the numbers your doctor typically tracks, but it's your address. These pictures don't just show different houses. They show how where you live and what surrounds you can shape how healthy you are and even how long you live. While we often think of factors such as access to clean water, nutritious food, healthcare, quality schools, when it comes to well-being, one factor we don't always take into consideration is residential green space or neighborhood greenness. So if you were to look at your home and neighborhood using satellite imagery, you could give it a rating of high, moderate, or low in greenness based on the amount of trees, vegetation, and green space around your house. And naturally, the greener your neighborhood looks from above, the higher its level of neighborhood greenness. Research shows that greener places are associated with healthier lives. Again and again, studies have shown that living near green spaces offer powerful mental and emotional benefits, including improved mood, reduced stress, better concentration. There are also clear physical health benefits, such as lower rates of type 2 diabetes, reduced cardiovascular risks, even lower body weight. The list of health benefits go on and on, often showing that the most vulnerable populations benefit the most from residential green space. And it doesn't stop with where you live. Having greater environmental greenness in the places you work, attend school, play, and even recover can also have positive effects on your health. The evidence is clear. Living near nature benefits your health even if you never step foot in it. So while we know environmental greenness is important, unfortunately, we have less and less access to nature and green spaces, especially compared to our parents, our grandparents, and our great-grandparents. Psychologists Peter Kahn and Tia Weiss call this environmental generational amnesia. This idea means that each new generation grows up with less nature, fewer trees, more concrete, more pollution, but we think this is normal. This is just how life is. And that's a problem because it's affecting our health in real measurable ways. In the same way we saw that people who have more trees near their home tend to have lower rates of heart disease, when trees are lost, rates of heart and lung disease go up. This is especially worrying because most other types of environmental problems, like pollution or deforestation, are at least recognized as problems. But with environmental amnesia, we don't even realize it's happening. Each generation grows up believing their environment is normal, and it's hard to fight for change if we don't realize something is being lost. So what can we do? Well, their proposed solution is simple but powerful. Spend more time in nature. When we reconnect with nature, even in small ways, we start to notice it, care about it, and are even more likely to advocate to protect it. And for the purposes of this presentation, we argue to spend family time in nature. So this interest in families and nature began when I started my PhD program. I knew I wanted to study children and nature in some capacity, but I wasn't sure what my focus would be. But that first semester, we were invited to evaluate a new nature playscape at the County Forest Preserve, and initially I set out to examine how the playscape affected children's play. However, what caught my interest was the role of family. When I spent the summer observing, interviewing, and surveying parents, I noticed they weren't talking about how the playground influenced their child's development. They were talking at length about how it was a unique context that positively influenced their family relationships and something that they could all do together. So when I began reading more about families in nature in the environmental psychology, family studies, family leisure literatures, I noticed that each field by itself only gave us a little bit of insight into why family-based nature activities are important, creating silos in our understanding and a lack of theoretical and empirical integration. So therefore, we created the family-based nature activities framework to help bridge the gaps between these different disciplines. Using attention restoration theory and routines and rituals, we look at how spending time in nature supports both individual and family well-being. So over the next few slides, I just want to highlight some of the main features of this framework that indicate why nature is so powerful for families. So first, what do we mean by nature in the term family-based nature activities? It's a fair question and one of the most debated topics in the field. When I ask my students, what do you like to do in nature? Many respond, I don't like nature. But when I follow up with, well, what's your favorite thing to do outdoors? They share wonderful stories of birthday celebrations at the park and even evening walks around their neighborhood after dinner with a sibling or parent. And honestly, that was me too. Even though as a kid, my favorite family leisure activity was going to Dudley Woods, a county park my dad and I nicknamed after our dog, I never thought of myself as a nature person. I don't like bugs. I prefer walking on a nice designated trail, and you definitely will not find me camping deep in the backcountry. And when I mentioned this to my child and nature professor, someone who deeply shaped my thinking on this topic, she would highlight that you don't have to go on a grand outdoor adventure to experience the benefits of nature. In fact, she'd point out that even simple everyday interactions count. Looking at plants on a windowsill, having a nature poster hung up in your office, or keeping a bouquet of flowers on your kitchen table can offer real, genuine restorative benefits. And so that perspective really influenced me when we developed the definition for family-based nature activities. We wanted to make it as broad and inclusive as possible to help capture the many ways people experience and enjoy nature. So our definition says, as long as you're outdoors and in that space has some natural elements and fewer man-made or built components, and you're with at least one other family member, we would consider that a family-based nature activity. All right. The family-based nature activities framework also draws on the leisure literature to understand why it's important for families to spend meaningful time together. Family leisure is viewed as one of the few experiences that bring family members together for any significant amount of time today and is associated with numerous positive family outcomes. However, this literature primarily focuses on the quantity of time together and does not take into consideration the quality of the interaction or even the type of leisure activity that families are doing. So therefore, we argue that participation in nature can promote family functioning even more so than other types of leisure contexts. We also draw on the field of environmental psychology to highlight why the context of nature is so important. Particularly, attention restoration theory helps us understand how nature restores our attention and reduces mental fatigue. As a society, we are mentally fatigued. Even as you sit and listen to my presentation, I bet several other things are competing for your attention. Maybe you're thinking about what you'll eat for lunch, or you just received a text message or an email notification that needs to be addressed immediately. And all of this makes sense, and it's part of our work, our school, the screens we use, our chores, but our brains get tired. But when you're in nature, it gives your mind a break. Even as you look at the screen, imagine yourself watching tall grasses sway in the wind, ocean waves rolling in, or even staring into a campfire. It catches your attention gently and allows your mind to quietly wander in a calm, effortless way. that allows your attention to rest and recharge. So thousands and thousands of studies have used attention restoration theory to highlight the impact of nature on individuals. And we really wanted to expand this research to look at, well, how, when you are mentally restored, how does that impact your family relationships? Because we know that when you're less mentally fatigued, you're able to pick up on social cues more easily, you feel less irritable, you have more self-control, all variables that can help you get along better with others. And then finally, we also draw on the family routines and rituals perspective to help us understand how and why repeated family interactions are important. Engagement in regular, predictable activities can foster identity, sense of belonging. It can provide continuity of meaning across generations. And using this framework, we're able to propose that a family who regularly visits the park together would benefit more than a family that rarely spends time outdoors, because we know that not every trip outdoors is going to be perfect. Sometimes it might rain, siblings might fight in the back of the car, or someone might get stung by a dragonfly. But these shared opportunities over time can strengthen family relationships. So over the last 8 years, we've utilized this framework to learn more about what family-based nature activities look like across different families, why people participate, what motivates them, and how they benefit. So we've interviewed mothers, fathers, middle schoolers, families in rural areas, families in urban areas, college students, and across all these different families, we've identified 3 themes that have emerged. So the first one is that participants say that when you engage in family-based nature activities, it improves your psychological state. You feel happier, more relaxed, better mood. You feel like you can get away from your stressors of daily life. And I just want to highlight a quote from each column. And specifically, when we look at mothers and middle schoolers, sometimes parents are motivated to go outside because they feel like it's good for their children. But it's the children who also realize that their parents are much different outdoors. For example, one middle schooler said, "I always like to talk to my mom outside because I feel like she's in a better mood. Inside, we argue about something, or she's usually stressed about work. So that kind of makes us more stressed. But when we're outside, we don't really remember all those things. We just look at everything and focus on the present more." A second theme we've noticed across all these different families is that they say when you engage in family-based nature activities, it encourages communication. You slow down, you focus on one another, it allows you to get to know each other, conversations last longer. The youth once again said that they liked talking to their parents side by side as opposed to having to make direct eye contact in a comfortable environment. And I just wanted to highlight here what our campus garden volunteers said. In this study, participants talked about gardening with parents and grandparents as a child, and as they reflected back, they found it was a wonderful opportunity to communicate, especially with grandparents that didn't always speak the same language. For example, one participant said, "I think it's a little difficult for me to sometimes communicate with my grandparents because they don't speak a lot of English and my Mandarin is not very good, and so it's hard to connect over something. And I think gardening was one of those things that my grandpa and I really got along with. We're really both interested in, and I guess it just gives us opportunities to connect." And then finally, across these different samples, we found that family-based nature activities foster purposeful engagement, that when you're outdoors together, you can focus on one another with fewer technical distractions from phones and screens, but you also feel away from chores and responsibilities. You can spend more meaningful time together. It gives you the opportunity to unwind and also create positive memories. So across all of this research, we kind of have two takeaway messages. One, that it's important to use a broad and inclusive definition of nature to ensure that all experiences are valued and represented. and that participation in FB&As have the potential to benefit people across diverse life stages, family roles, geographic locations, income levels, and even cultural backgrounds. So let's take a closer look at a study that we conducted. We conducted a within subjects experimental design study to examine the effects of a 20-minute walk outdoors compared to a 20-minute walk indoors on mothers and daughters. And we specifically only recruited mothers and daughters because we knew we were going to have a smaller sample size and we wanted to preserve statistical power. And we also chose daughters ages 10 to 12 because they could cognitively understand all elements of the study, and pre-adolescents tend to spend more time outdoors than adolescents with their parents. So we were interested in 3 research questions. Do mothers and daughters have improved attention after the outdoor walk compared to the indoor walk? Do mothers and daughters express more positivity and reduced negativity during the outdoor walk compared with the indoor walk? And finally, do mothers and daughters display greater dyadic cohesion after the outdoor walk compared to the indoor walk? So let me just double check my share screen setting. Oh, and I can now share my sound with you. Thank you so much. All right, so I want to go ahead and just briefly walk through our research design with you. So this was a within subjects design, meaning all of the participants engaged in both conditions. So they were identical, and we had them on the same day of the week, same time of the day, 1 week apart. So if you came Monday at 3 p.m., the next week you would come Monday at 3 p.m. And across the 2 conditions, there were 3 phases. So the first phase was the attention fatiguing activity, where you came to the research home and you were asked to solve as many math problems and word search problems as you could in 10 minutes while listening to this construction noise. And the idea of this was that we knew that if your attention is fatigued, you're more susceptible to the intervention. So immediately after the attention, we tested their attention, and then we randomly assigned them to either the outdoor condition or the indoor condition. And so both conditions were 1 mile away from the research home, and you had to walk a circular loop that had a similar volume of people. We tried to make it, again, as identical as possible. During your 20-minute walk, we measured your mood by having the mother wear an audio recorder. And then after the walk, we looked at their attention again, and then we had them do a 10-minute interaction task where we looked at their dyadic cohesion. And then at the end, we did a closing interview. So in order to measure their attention, we used the digit span backwards test, one of the most widely used tests. And this is when you ask participants, you ask them to listen to a sequence of numbers, such as 4, 6, and then repeat the sequence back in reverse order, 6, 4. Once they get 2 consecutively incorrect, then you tally up their total measurement. All right, we also collected observational data. So during each walk, we looked at positivity and negativity. And then after, we looked at dyadic cohesion. And so positivity and negativity, again, we listened to the audio recordings to identify positive and negative emotional talk. And with cohesion, this was characterized as a sense of unity, togetherness, and closeness within the family. So I just want to very briefly give you an example of what this interaction task look like. So we coded these in 30-second intervals, and in the 30-second interval, you have to decide whether cohesion is evident or not evident. We used the 3-point scale, but for the purposes of this exercise,
on the right,
watch to determine if it's evident or not.
Mm-hmm. You got it.
I got this.
That's my logic, girl. Bam. Move on.
Wait.
Oh, no.
Nice job. How about,
How about
mine
you
too?
just solve the puzzles and take the pictures?
I did this.
So we rated this family as a 3 because they showed, as you could see, high levels of emotional connection and cooperation. They laughed together, they checked in with each other, and they worked as a team during the task. All right, so let's go ahead and look at some of our results. So the first question we were interested in is differences in attention after each walk. So here on the screen, you'll see that the dashed line is the outdoor condition and the purple line is the indoor condition. And here on the left is mothers and here on the right is daughters. So with mothers, we did find a significant setting by time interaction and that their attention significantly improved after the outdoor walk compared to the indoor walk. But interestingly, for daughters, we only found the main effect for time, in that daughter's attention improved after both the indoor and the outdoor walk. And so this is really significant because, again, caregivers oftentimes are motivated to get outside for their children's sake. You feel like, oh, they need fresh air, they need exercise, they need a break. But it's sometimes the parent that actually benefits the most from an outdoor leisure activity compared to an indoor leisure activity. In terms of positivity, we found no statistically significant differences, but as you look at the screen, you can see that both moms and daughters, they did display positivity across both conditions and in both settings. So we can infer that both walks were enjoyable. And when we pull from the leisure literature, that makes sense because we know that shared positive family leisure experiences can promote positivity and potentially strengthen family relationships. All right, in terms of negativity, here's where we found a lot of significance. So we first found a significant main effect for person in that daughters displayed greater negativity than mothers, which makes sense developmentally. We found a significant main effect for setting in that they displayed greater negativity in the indoor condition compared to the outdoor condition. And we also found a significant setting by person interaction in that both mothers and daughters displayed less negativity outdoors compared to indoors. And this finding aligns perfectly with the environmental psychology literature because that literature suggests that nature helps reduce stress and mental fatigue even more so than boosting positive emotions. By comparison, if they were doing another type of leisure activity, like they went to a sporting event or were watching race cars, they might be enjoying the activity, but it's so highly stimulating and drawing on your directed attention that by the time you leave, you might be mentally fatigued. But when you're in nature, it again allows you to restore your attention. And when your attention is restored, you're less irritable, you can pick up on social cues more easily, all things that would let you get along better with others, potentially by expressing less negativity. And then finally, we also found in terms of dyadic cohesion, that dyadic cohesion, and dyadic just means the mom and daughter working together, was significantly greater after the outdoor walk. And this was a real significant contribution to the environmental psychology literature because most research only looks at the benefits of during an experience outdoors, but this research shows that after you spend time in nature, it can even potentially carry over to the next activity that you do together. So altogether, this research, I want you to just highlight a few key takeaways before we get into our final theme, is that it only takes 20 minutes. Keep in mind that the mothers and daughters only took a 20-minute walk, and we saw all these benefits in terms of restored attention, less negativity, greater cohesion, that caregivers can benefit too, and that the benefits of spending time in nature are not isolated to the event alone, but can even carry over to the next activity that you do. So from today's presentation, I also hope it encourages you to get outdoors. We know that time spent outside, especially for children, is very, very beneficial. research study after research study shows that children who spend more time outdoors, it's associated with adulthood benefits, such as pro-environmental behaviors and attitudes in adulthood, more likelihood of pursuing an environmental career, you're more likely to overcome barriers to participation. And so we really wanted to add to this literature and look at, well, what about if you engage in family-based nature activities? And we looked at not just childhood as one point in time, but across like early childhood, early adolescence, adolescence, just kind of the early life course. And we found that participants who engaged in greater family-based nature activities in childhood, it was also associated with a greater frequency of time spent outside as an adult. You were more likely to prefer outdoor leisure environments than indoor leisure environments, and it was even associated with greater family relationship quality in adulthood. So the takeaway is that if you have a young person in your life, I truly hope you get them outdoors as a way to not only promote environmental stewardship and lifelong participation, but also as a way to build stronger, more connected families. During moments of change in your life is another great time to get outdoors or begin a new nature routine. In fact, research shows, based on interview data with older adults, when they reflected on their life course, they identified key life transitions, such as getting married, becoming a parent, or even retirement, as the times when they were most likely to spend time outdoors. So if you're going through a life transition, it might be a great opportunity to develop new routines and new connections. And we found that starting college, I just want to highlight this, is a wonderful time to develop new outdoor routines. We interviewed undergraduate students who volunteered at the campus community garden, and we asked them, what motivated you to participate? And they said, I was new to SJSU and I wanted to meet friends. I wanted to get involved. And once they were involved in volunteering at the garden, they talked about all the new environmental kind of attitudes and behaviors that they adopted. They gained new knowledge and skills. It promoted sustainable habits like composting and dietary changes. Every participant in this study, regardless of major, was able to talk about how they want to apply it to their future career. And it just was nice for them to feel like bigger than, like they were part of something bigger than themselves. They saw how sustainable actions, no matter how big or small, contributed to a larger environmental movement. So based on what we learned today, we know that access to green space is linked to so many benefits. And while we recognize that green space is not a panacea or a remedy for all diseases, it's an important piece of the puzzle that's often left out when we think about ways to promote health and family relationships. So I hope as a community, we can keep advocating for this piece of the puzzle to make sure that everyone has access to nature and to ensure that future generations grow up knowing what it feels like to spend time outside. So from today's presentation, I hope you took away two things. One, that nature makes us healthier. Two, I hope it inspires you to get outdoors. And when I say get outdoors, I just wanted to share a quick story, but I remember coming back from a trip to the Grand Canyon as an undergraduate student, so excited to tell my professor about the trip, they studied parks, they studied conservation, and they smiled and they listened and they said, that's wonderful, but I want you to find that same sense of excitement and awe in a place close to home. And so that idea really has stayed with me ever since. He reminded me to value our local green spaces and that it doesn't have to be this big national park to appreciate and enjoy. And personally, I've noticed my favorite places have changed over time. When it was just my husband and our beautiful dog Benji, we loved exploring the different Santa Clara County parks. And now that we have an almost 15-month-old son, we're staying very local, enjoying our neighborhood park, our community garden, and even the fountain across the street. But it's really these nearby local spaces that are woven into my daily life with the people I care about that mean the most to me now. So I hope today's presentation inspires you to spend more time outdoors, to notice the nature around you, and to find a place, near or far, that truly feels meaningful and restorative. So there are so many people to thank. Just very quickly, thank you again to the University Scholars team. Thank you to all the wonderful undergraduate research assistants who've helped with different elements of this research. Here's them presenting some of that work, and hopefully you saw their names underlined on several publications. A special shout out to my mentor, Dr. Aaron Abada. We even named our son after him just based on the wonderful role he played in my life. Thank you so much to my CHAD department colleagues and Lurie College of Education colleagues, my collaborators, family and friends, and of course the study participants for your time and participation. So I know Vice Provost Barrera is going to ask me some questions, but please do not hesitate to reach out if you have any additional questions.
Thanks so much, Dina. You could see you're getting a ton of emoji, hand claps, and celebrations. I know there's a lot of excitement about what you've shared, and there's some good questions in the chat. And the way I'm kind of seeing them come together is there's a set of questions about the scope of family-based nature activities and kind of getting more into how that's defined. So the first one is, would family-based nature activities include community or public pools?
That is a wonderful question. We would count it because we really use this broad and inclusive definition. And so just to highlight, this is one of the most debated topics in the field. Other researchers might not use like that as a definition, but we coined the term family-based nature activities because we're interested in what families are doing outdoors, as opposed to nature-based family activities, where others are more interested in how different natural settings can impact specific outcomes. So for us, we just want to listen to you and talk to you and learn more about why are these community public pools so important to you and your family? How did you connect during these experiences? How have they stuck with you? So for us, we really, really value that inclusive definition.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think the person asking this question is, I think, interested in expanding not just green space, but also blue space. If we think about water activities and also that being an element of outdoor well-being and activity. There's another question here, again, going back to kind of the scope of things, that is forest bathing something that pops up in the work that you've done, the studies that you've seen?
So I have truly not done as much with forest bathing, but I definitely know more and more people are interested in it. I know it's very popular in Eastern cultures. And I can just kind of envision like the first part of my presentation highlighting that when you have this residential greenness around you, or whatever area you're in, that will probably significantly improve your health. Because I couldn't get into all the details about residential green space, but it's just study after study after study. Like there's even one study that looked at hospital patients recovering from gallbladder surgery, and they found that those who had a view of nature from their hospital room recovered faster, took less pain medication, and even the doctors and nurses wrote more positive notes about them compared to patients recovering from gallbladder surgery who had a brick wall. So again, that the power of nature, it just has so many benefits. So I could definitely see forest bathing being similar.
Very interesting. Okay, so this is the last in this kind of thread about thinking about the scope of activities. There's someone asking if you've thought at all about how having a dog helps get people outside, right? And how, not just the relationships people build with their families, but also maybe their furry family members and how this may contribute to well-being.
I absolutely love that question because hopefully, even from my presentation, you can see dogs have been an influential role in my life. And my colleague and I, Dr. Kim Sai, that's what we're actually working on now, where we collected data last year asking undergraduate students about the role that their dog plays in their life. And we've already analyzed the quantitative and qualitative data. And quantitatively, we know that if you have a dog, it's associated with being doing more physical activity and less stress. And qualitatively, we know that participant after participant said, my dog helps me get outside. It actually provides like routine and structure in my life because I'm so busy as a college student. I otherwise wouldn't make time for it, but I have to do it for my pet. So we're really excited to keep working on that and hopefully get it published soon.
Oh, great. Now, there's two questions here that are getting at some of the challenges with thinking about green space, access to, right? So here's someone saying, can you share a little bit about how access to public transportation near county or national parks might be a hindrance to outdoor frequency, like people's ability to get to a greener space if maybe they live in a more urban area? And then related to this is someone who's saying, there are some green spaces, but that are closer to pollution, right? Such as living near an oil pipeline or closer to factory farms. And I don't know what are your thoughts about some of these kind of infrastructural challenges that complicate green space?
Yeah, and that's a great question that I honestly don't quite know as much about. But what comes to mind when we're asked these questions, again, is like, I just think it's so important to have this inclusive definition because even when we looked at that residential green space, it's the most vulnerable populations that benefit the most. And what I mean by that is like study after study was conducted, and sometimes they find no statistical significance. But as soon as they control for income, immediately they find statistical significance because it's the lower income communities that benefit the most because they don't always have money or like time even to go to these faraway national parks. So that's why I think we have to advocate that everyone has access to green space in the places that they live. So that's kind of what comes to mind when I hear that question.
Yeah, in a way, I'm going to insert my own kind of question here. It's something I found really interesting that you shared earlier in your presentation is the concept of environmental generational amnesia, right? And this comes from the work of some other scholars with whom you've engaged. And it just has me thinking about my own family story, right? That I come from a working class family in very urban inner city Chicago. And thinking about the upward mobility my parents had, where they moved us to the suburbs, I had access to more green space. I'm thinking about how now I live here in California and we're very fortunate here in the Bay Area, and that I have a car and easy access to like great hiking trails or whatever. In what ways can, if there's generational amnesia around the environment, I don't know how quickly can that be regained generation to generation?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. Um, Two thoughts come to mind. So one, again, just I mean, I'm glad I introduced it of that residential green space, but some of the most seminal research on that topic was actually in Chicago, looking at public housing. And even when people were randomly assigned to public housing, those who had the view of nature from their apartment compared to those who didn't had significantly greater health outcomes in terms of concentration, mood, self-control. So we know again that it doesn't have to be this big natural space, that even this like small greenness in where you live can have these positive benefits. But in terms of like what we can do, I'm part of this group called the Nature and Health Alliance, and I've loved being a part of it. And each month someone new presents, and a lot of times we talk about using nature-based solutions, especially for issues around climate issues. But like the group brainstorms together where one person does research on bus stops, and they show that like if you have a tree near a bus stop, it reduces the heat significantly even compared to a shelter. Someone else in the group talks about you opening public school yards, opening up schoolyards to the public so that everyone can enjoy that space. So even it doesn't have to be this major thing, but how we can work together as a community to come up with solutions that have a big impact.
Well, I'll fit in one last question here before we wrap up, and it's someone who is very curious to know what research are you working on and where are you headed next with this work?
Oh, I love that. So, one new line of research is looking at how dogs motivate you to get outdoors. And then another new line of research with two new research assistants, Isabella Tapia and Rashona Martin. And we're just starting a project looking at how spending time in nature the year after having a child, how that might help reduce postpartum depression. So those are the two projects we're currently working on.
Great. And I love to hear about your work with students, how you're involving them in your research. There's a student here in the chat that's excited to connect with you in office hours. And I'm going to go ahead and don't mean to speak for you, but to the student who posed that question, I'm sure Dr. Izenstark will be happy to chat with you. Please reach out to her or look her up online to find her office hours. And with that, I just want to say again, thank you to Dr. Izenstark for sharing this super fascinating work. Thanks again to the team that made this happen, to the audience for your time and attention and great questions. We hope to see you at our next University Scholars Series event, which is Wednesday, November 19th. We'll be hearing from Dr. Jalal Sarabadani from the School of Information Systems and Technology, talking to us about understanding and managing the dark side of IT. So please stay tuned for that. And again, thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.